it's Double Monday. We have an easy puzzle to solve, of course, for today, but we're also gonna solve a brutal one today. So, if you don't know what Clues by Sam is, first of all, it is a daily puzzle. It is free. There are 20 people each day, and you gotta figure out who is a criminal and who is an innocent among those 20 people. And they give you clues to help you with that process. And if you subscribe to the newsletter from the creator, Sam, then you get some bonus puzzles every Monday, which means that today we get a brutal one to solve on the channel, but there's more on the newsletter if you want to solve those. Of course, you're not going to get the ones for this week if you subscribe right now, but you are going to get Monday of next week a set of bonus puzzles. And I'm going to solve one of them today, but there's a second brutal one on the newsletter, and there's a few easier ones also to solve. It's been a while since I've solved the brutal one, but Sam says that it's not supposed to be as hard as an evil one, so let's see how that goes. But first, let's focus on the easy one for today. So we start with Zara telling us that Xavi and her have two instant neighbors in common. So Xavi and Zara only have two neighbors in common, so both of those have to be innocents. And now we don't need Zara's clue anymore because it doesn't tell us anything else. Thor says there are exactly two innocents in row 4. So Thor and Uma both are in row 4 and both of them are innocent, so we don't have anybody else in that row who is going to be an innocent. And now we get one new clue from Scott saying that Bobby is one of Gunny's 5 criminal neighbors. So Bobby is a criminal neighbor and Gunny has 5 criminal neighbors total. So 4 more we have to find. Let's leave that clue there and look at Bobby's. Exactly 2 of the 4 criminals neighboring K are in row 1. So K has 5 people neighboring them, and 2 of them are criminals and in row 1. So there's 2 people in row 1 neighboring K, both of those have to be criminals. And there's 4 criminals total neighboring K, so only 1 person who is an innocent neighboring K. Let's leave Bobby's clue there to remind us of that. Derek says that each row has at least 1 innocent, and right now row 1 needs an innocent and has only 1 person left, so that person, Anna, has to be an innocent. Anna says there are no innocents above Ollie, so the 2 people above Ollie have to be criminal. One of them is Igor, who gives us a new clue, and a number of innocents in row 3, neighbor Scott. Oh, we also know that Ollie and Paula are opposites now because only one of them is going to be the single innocent that neighbors K, so we can tag them with the same color to indicate that they are one or the other an innocent, which is going to make the other one a criminal. So Scott is going to have either 3 innocents in row 3 being his neighbors, or only 1 innocent. So how does that go? And what does that mean for me? Oh, we know that Gunny has 5 criminal neighbors. So if Scott were to have 3 innocents neighboring him in row 3, that will make Gunny not able to have 5 criminal neighbors because there will be only 1 person left to be a criminal neighboring him. So we can't have 3 criminals neighboring Scott. 3 innocents, neighboring Scott in row 3, which makes us sure that there's only 1 and 2 criminals, right? Those 2 criminals are gonna be shared with Gunny, and now Gunny is gonna have all 5 criminal neighbors already, including those 2 shared with Scott. So that makes Freya not one of those, because the 5 total are already there, not including her. Freya, let's remove these tags. Freya now says there's an equal number of innocents in rows 3 and 4. So we know how many innocents are in row 3, do we? No, we know how many innocents are in row 4, 2. So we know that only 1 innocent neighbor is caught in row 3, which means that we need a second innocent, and that can only be Paula. the only person in row 3 who doesn't neighbor Scott. So that makes Paula an innocent. Ollie was her opposite, so Ollie has to be a criminal. And now we know that Martin and Nancy are opposites again, because one of them has to be the innocent neighboring Scott. Ollie now says there are exactly 3 criminals in column C. So all 3 of them are already revealed, which makes Xavier not a criminal. And we don't need Ollie's clue anymore. Guess we don't need a lot of clues, right? But we also don't need to dismiss them. I'm just sort of a perfectionist. Xavier now says there's an odd number of criminals neighboring Freya. So Freya has Bobby, that's 1 criminal, and she's gonna have a second one here in row 3 neighboring her. So that's 2. And 2 is an even number, so she needs a third one to make an odd number, which has to be Gunny. And we're talking about criminals and not innocents. Just double checking there. Gunny now says there are more criminals in row 2 than row 4. So we know the total for row 4, that's 2, which means that we need more than 2 in row 2. And there's only one more person to make more than that, so that person has to be a criminal to make 3 in row 2. K, the new criminal, says that Wally has exactly 3 innocent neighbors. So where's Wally? Wally so far has 2 innocent neighbors and only 1 neighbor left, so that 1 neighbor left has to be the third and last innocent. And that innocent says that only 1 column has exactly 3 innocents. So that column is column D. It already has 3 and there's all the people revealed. That means that column A couldn't have 3 only, and it does so far. So it needs 1 more to not be left with 3. And that's Martin, the only person left. So Martin being an innocent makes Nancy a criminal. And now Nancy says there are 10 innocents total. So here we have 5, here we have 4, so we need 1 more, which is Wally, the only person left. And we are done with the easy one. So that took a long while. Only 40% of the people have a perfect solve. That's interesting. But we are gonna jump into the brutal one right away. Also, Wally said, let me restart the timer here just to show that we have today's March. Today is May the 25th, and we are doing the last puzzle, the brutal one, for the bonus ones. It's also nice to subscribe to the newsletter because it gets some insights from Sam. Like, for example, this week we have a form where we can give some feedback on the difficulty of the puzzles, and we can also see what Sam is looking for in terms of other types of feedback, like if we want other types of puzzles daily. So, and also we get to learn a little bit about the behind the scenes of making the puzzle. So it's really nice. I like that. And I'm gonna restart the timer again so that we can start the brutal puzzle now. So Wally says that Zed is one of 2 criminals below Joy. So Zed is a criminal. Below Joy, there's 2 more people besides Zed, so those 2 have to have 1 criminal among them. And the other one is not gonna be a criminal, so Pip and Thor are opposites. I don't need Wally's clue now because I tagged those people. Zed now says there are no innocents below Joy who neighbor Sia. So Sia neighbors Zed and Thor, who are below Joy. None of those can be innocent, so now we know that Thor is a criminal, which makes Pip an innocent because they were opposites. And we don't need Zed's clue anymore. Thor now says there are exactly 2 innocents above Raoul. There's 3 people above Raoul. 2 of those are going to be innocents, which means only 1 criminal. Pip says that only 1 of the 3 criminals neighboring Kita is to the left of him. So to the right of Kita or to the left of Pip. I'm not gonna do this, what I just did there, saying to the right of Kita, because that's confusing. We're not looking at this row. Let's just look at the row with the people directly to the left of Pip. So to the left of Pip, there's 1 criminal neighboring Kita. And there's 2 people neighboring Kita total who are to the left of Pip, Kummer and Max. So only one of those is going to be a criminal, right? The other one's going to be an innocent. But Kita needs three criminals total neighboring her. And there's only two people left besides those two who are to the left of Pip. So those two have to be criminals as well so that she can have a total of 3. Now we don't need Pep School because we tagged these people. And row says there are exactly 2 instances in row 2. Okay, we don't know about anybody in row 2. Van says that row 1 is the only row with exactly 3 instances. So we know that row 3 so far has 2 instances. Pip's one of them. The other one is either going to be Kummer or Max. So we couldn't have a third one because row 1 is the only row that has 3. So Olive, who is in row 3, the only person left, couldn't be an instant. Is that what we take from Vince's clue? We're gonna leave that there. Olive says that exactly 2 criminals in column C have a criminal directly to the left of them. Okay, so this is the thing. This is the thing that makes things confusing. Because we gotta look at the role of the people who have people to their left and the role of the people who are to the left of the people we are looking at. Words, phrases, grammar, meanings. It's very hard to get a grasp of it if you're not used to how the phrasing goes and to sort of put the scenario in your head. So let's say, for example, that Olive were a criminal. I mean, Olive is a criminal. Let's say that Olive had a criminal to her left. Then she would be one of the criminals in column C that have a criminal to their left. But if Sarah were to be an innocent, even though she is or she has a criminal to her left, she is not a criminal. So this couple of people here don't really count for Olive's clue. And same would go for Max being an innocent. Even though Olive is a criminal, she doesn't have a criminal to her left. So gotta keep in mind that both of the people have to be criminals. We know there are 2 instances of a rule, right? And that's one thing that we know. There are exactly 2 instances in row 2. So that's crazy. There's 2 instances of a row and there's 2 instances in row 2. And in column C, there's 2 criminals with a criminal to their left. So let's say that the 2 instances of a row were Gus and Betty. That will make Max a criminal, but that would also force Sarah to be a criminal. Why? Because the only other criminal we have to the left of anybody in row C is Row. So to make a second couple of criminals with these 2 columns, we will need Row and Sarah to be criminals. If it were anybody else, can we make Gus a criminal? And if that were the case, would that also force Row to be a criminal? Would it also force Sarah to be a criminal? You bet. And why is that? Because again, there's only one more criminal in column B. And whoever that criminal is, they are gonna have to be to the left of another criminal. But that's not what we gotta be looking at. We gotta be looking at the fact that the first criminal has to be to the left of a criminal. Otherwise, we're not gonna have enough couples of criminals. So Sarah is always forced to be a criminal. And she doesn't give us any clue. So that is crazy. How is that crazy? We know that row 1 has 3 incense and that row 2 has 2 incense. So how do we deal with row 1? Could row 1 ever be the row where column B and column C have a couple of criminals? No, it couldn't, because there's only one criminal in row 1, right? So what has to be the row that has a couple of criminals? It has to be either row 3 or row 2. If it were row 2, if it is row 2, that works fine. Joy and Frida will be innocents. And it doesn't really matter what Claire is. If it is row 3, I'm doing it wrong. If it is row 3, it doesn't really matter what Ellen is, but what couldn't happen is that we couldn't have Betty be a criminal. Because like I said, if Betty is a criminal, she forces, there's only one criminal above Raoul, right? So if Betty is a criminal, she forces Gus and Max to be innocents, and now we can't have a couple of criminals in row 1 to have a second couple in columns B and C. So Betty is for sure an innocent, which makes Gus and Max opposites now. And Betty gives us a new clue. Only one criminal in column A has a criminal directly to the right of them. So we're talking about column A. Only one criminal in column A has a criminal to their right. And of course it wouldn't be Alex, because Alex doesn't have a criminal to his right. But it could be Kita. It could be Kumar. It couldn't be Frida. If Frida is a criminal and she has a criminal to her right, she's gonna force everybody else in row 2 to be innocent. And Gus being a criminal forces Max to be an innocent, and now there's no couple of criminals in columns B and C other than Raoul and Sarah. So that breaks. And if Frida is a criminal with Gus being an innocent, that will make Max a criminal, and that would force Kita to be a criminal. But what is it that disambiguates this situation to me? Only one criminal in column A has a criminal directly to the right of them. I mean, we couldn't make Kita an innocent, could we? Because if we make Kita an innocent, we're gonna have to have a pair of criminals in column A. And it for sure is not gonna be Kumar and Max because they are opposites. And I just proved that we can't have Rita and Gus be criminals. So Kita has to be the criminal with a criminal to her right in column A. This is very interesting. A very interesting way of making the clue in a way that we have to look for the person and it's not a positive or a negative. Like it's saying, I've mentioned before that the presence of the word only in the clue makes you feel like you have to prove that there's not more than one. But sometimes the case is where you have to prove that there is one and who that one person is. And in this case, we know it's Kita. Now Kita says that only one of the 4 criminals neighboring Gus is in row 2. So Gus has to have a criminal neighboring him in row 2, and he's in row 2. But somebody to his left or right is gonna be a criminal, and the other person to his left or right is gonna be an innocent. But we also know that Gus has 4 criminals total. So one of them in row 2, one of them is Olive, that's 2. One of them is either Kumar or Max, so that's 3. One of them has to be either Alex or Claire, right, in row 1. Which means that Donald, because we know that row 1 has only 1 criminal, so we know that Donald is not a criminal. And now Donald tells us that there are 9 innocents total. And we know about how many. We know about Donald, Betty, Pip, and Wally, that's 4. Plus 1 more here in row 1, so that's 5. Plus 1 more here in row 2, that's 6. And 1 more in row 3, that's 7. But since Rita and Ellen are opposites, we know that Gus, I'm running out of colors. We know that Gus and Joy are opposites as well because there's 2 of each in row 2. 2 criminals and 2 innocents. So that's 8. Oh, not my nemesis, counting how many people of each row are there in the board. So again, Donald, Patty, Pip, and Wally, that's 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 with Sia. It worked. I was right. So now Sia says that only one person in a corner has exactly 2 innocent neighbors. It's definitely not Zed or Vance. So it has to be either Alex or Donald. And we're talking about innocent neighbors. And we know that Gus or do we know that Gus? Because Gus being an innocent makes Max a criminal, which makes Kumar an innocent. That's okay. Is the thing the fact that no matter who it is, because if this is the case, because these guys are opposites, sets of opposites, like, how do I say they are alternating sets of opposites, which means that if Rita is an innocent and Helen is a criminal, and Gus is an innocent and Joy is a criminal, now there's no way that anybody in a corner is gonna have 2 incense neighboring them, because Alex has 3, and the most that Donald could have is 1. So what does that mean? Because what if Gus is a criminal? If Gus is a criminal, could Helen be an innocent? No. Because if Gus is a criminal and Helen's an innocent, that makes Frida a criminal, and now we have 2 pairs of criminals in columns A and B. Which can't happen, there's only 1. So we know that Frida and Gus are opposites as well. I mean, they can't be innocents because that makes nobody in a corner have 2 innocents neighboring them. And they can be criminals because we have only 1 set of criminals in columns A and B, and that's Kita and Raul, so they are for sure opposites. And if they are for sure opposites, and there's too many tags going on, I hope it's understandable, but if both of them are opposites, that makes Alex for sure the person in the corner who has 2 innocents neighboring them, because there's no way, like, with Alex already having Betty as an innocent neighbor, there's no way that Alex is not gonna have 2. Because there's gonna be a second and final one here in row 2 neighboring Alex. So that means that Donald couldn't have 2. So far, so good. Does that make Claire a criminal? Because Frida being a criminal makes Gus an innocent, which makes Helen an innocent and Joy a criminal. So does Frida and Gus being opposites make Helen and Joy opposites? I hope this is understandable, because I'm and sometimes I confuse myself as I'm trying to explain it, but this is pretty clear for me in my mind. I fear it's not as easily explainable verbally. And Frida being an innocent makes Gus a criminal, which switches these guys here. So yeah, so Helen and Joy are also opposites. So now we know that Claire couldn't be an innocent, otherwise Donald would end up with 2 innocents as well. So Claire has to be a criminal, and she was opposites with Alex. Now, Alex says that there's an odd number of innocents neighboring Coomer. Where's Coomer? Coomer is gonna have 1 innocent here in row 2, shared with Alex, neighboring him. So 1 is the odd number because there's only 1 more person neighboring Coomer, that's Max, who couldn't be an innocent, otherwise Coomer would have 2 innocents neighboring him. So Max is a criminal, and she was opposite with Coomer himself. Now, Max being a criminal to the left of Olive, who is a criminal, does something for us. She was opposite with Gus. So we know that Gus is an innocent, which makes both Frida and Joy criminals and Helen an innocent. Oof. Really good. 20 minutes, that's fine. Completely fine. I have 2 comments on that. To me, it feels like brutal should be harder than evil, because the word just sounds harder. I don't know how to explain that, but it does. It does sound harder than evil, somehow. Evil is like a tame version of brutal. But anyway, it's not supposed to be. And I feel like the time is a-okay. I hope I could get you into my mind to understand what I was thinking there. But if you have any questions, any comments, leave them down below. And I love to see your comments, especially when they are so kind, as you always are. Thank you guys. Love you so much. And I'll see you tomorrow for more Clothes by Sam. Bye bye.